we heard in the first day that the world is looking at the trends. Really, we have reason to be extremely optimistic. I'm not sure I completely agree with that, but I think optimism is an important human quality that we have to maintain, but I think we also have to sort of very soberly look at what's happening to our planet. We were told also to sort of look at a vision to the future as we're coming up to a millennium, but in one of the talks we saw a culture that goes back thousands of years and how even objects that were 500 years old were inspiration. So I think we have to think of the past as well as the future in terms of where we are going, and we saw some very moving examples of that, as well as how things are worked out from a design point of view. The interesting thing for me in terms of communicating science is that the science community in the last 10 years has been really challenged in many ways, but what I consider the militarization of science in this country in the last decade compared to the previous decade, and that's always been a force in science. And I think if you look at the 20th century as people that are visual, I don't think anybody can deny that probably the two strongest visual images in the 20th century, at least in my own mind, are the blast of Hiroshima or Nagasaki, which is a very destructive endpoint of science and one that has frightened us for the last 40 or 50 years, and the Earth from space, which was also an image that has the potential to really unify us in a global manner. And my whole career, the last 20 years, from being co-author on college textbooks and making films, has been really to transform some of these very complex things, as Bill said, into information that can be digestible. And that's a design issue. I'm a designer as well as a scientist, and I feel like the layering of information is extremely important. We live in a very complex period in history right now in which science is seen either as a savior or as a curse, and it's neither of those things. It's something that's filled with many contradictions, as each of our lives are, and I think that's one of the things that even comes out in a conference like this, the sort of contradictions that you're facing, the polarities of viewpoint. What I'm going to try and do is, for the next, whatever, 30 minutes or so, 30 or 40 minutes, show some of the sort of the design considerations and use that as a starting point for dealing with the issues of the Earth. And these are actual real data taken from satellite sensors. If you remanipulate that data and look at it from a changing point of view of time, which is a lot of what nature is about and the study of science is about, you get the lower images, which you can see the major currents of the ocean. This is stuff that oceanographers would never be able to do. We've collected more data in 3 months from space than we had in 100 years of oceanographic expeditions. The cost of the expeditions is just too difficult, and you're looking at something that's constantly changing in time and space. And here we can take a snapshot of a day of the ocean color off Baja, which is also a reflection of the currents themselves. You see all these swirling colors of reds and greens and yellows, which are not only a reflection of the biological activity of the plankton, but also, since they're passive creatures, they're floating in the water themselves, so they become a signature of the currents. We're all aware of the issues of acid rain, of the globe, of ozone depletion, of deforestation, of desertification. These are all very important images, and we're starting to build data sets now which require long-term observations. You know, on one hand, we know that things are going to hell on some levels. On the other hand, we also need to be rational about this and understand some of the patterns that are existing. We're working on a pilot right now with the U.S. Geological Survey to produce a digital science journal as a CD-ROM. We're going to be faced with, in the next few years, enormous amounts of information which will be coming online about the Earth. And it's not enough to do this as paper anymore. There are a lot of issues associated with that, and we really need to be thinking through how we will disseminate this information both in real time over networks, as well as having turnaround for like a CD-ROM in which 500, 600, 1,000 megabytes of information can be available. All the things you're seeing here, except for the U.S., the Arctic Data Interactive, I've basically funded out of the R&D out of my company. One of the things about hypermedia and multimedia that drives me nuts is that everybody's talking about it, but very few people, especially in the science world, are paying for it. We put together in a very short time, Robert Redford had heard about our work and was putting on a symposium with Soviet and American politicians, scientists, and people from the media for 4 days last August, and they flew, the people from his organization, the Institute for Resource Management, flew out to our studio in Del Mar and wanted to see some of our work, and they gave us carte blanche to do whatever we wanted, especially since they weren't paying for it. I told them there wasn't going to be any client sign-off. Our planet is sick right now. we wanted to use the metaphor, the health metaphor, and the heartbeat of the planet is definitely under stress, and a lot of it is due to human activity. Hopefully, as the Cold War is ending, we are faced with really understanding the fact that if we do not take care of the physical base that we are living on, we don't need a virtual reality. You know, we need a physical reality to really take care of right now. And that in no way is a criticism. I think some of the things that I saw yesterday in terms of virtual reality are very important, especially in terms of the healthcare issues. But I think it's important that we have a physical base that we're dealing with here that is getting very seriously messed up, and we need to take care of it. We also have a series of films right now that explain some data on sea level rise. Remember, if the planet is warming up, we're going to be faced with melting of ice caps. That will change the sea level. We decided to get some data on the U.S. Let's show these guys what's really happening here. Did a pullback here, some little television style, because they relate to that. They watch television. They're trying to be stars. And we took that 3D and put it into a planar projection. Now that was the Capitol Mall. There's the Potomac River. Now imagine in 40 to 50 years, this is projected now, and it's possibly going to happen. We're talking about, and we're not on a coastal region now. We're inland here. There's a river. But 50 years from now, if we have this 2-degree warming of temperature, we're going to be looking at a meter rise in the sea level, 3 feet. Well, what does that mean? That means the end of the beautiful East Wing, the I.M. Pei Gallery, the National Gallery. These are areas that are going to be flooded. And our president in 2040 will be taking a boat, for his inauguration here. So, this had a big impact in the Senate. And this is the way you got to reach these people. You got to find the information that's going to hit them where they live. If I had shown Bangladesh, which is also under stress, that wouldn't have had the same impact. So one of the things that Tak said yesterday I think is very important as designers, as community, is what is the client's problem? Make that your problem, you know, and solve it. We're living in a very critical time, and we're all faced with contradictions in our lives in terms of our concern about the environment and the way we live and the options we have actually to live a life in balance. I certainly think people that are involved with technology are probably, their lives are more thrown out of balance than anybody. We're dealing with nanoseconds all the time, and I know that's a big issue for me personally, that, you know, I'm responding to faxes and this and that, and I don't really want that in my life, and it's a metaphor on some levels also of the fact that we need to search within ourselves ways of bringing things into balance so that, in general, the critical issues that we face can be dealt with. The UN has projected that if these global warming trends continue, that by the middle part of the next century, we're going to be faced with vast parts of the planet that are really not habitable, and the upward potential of 300 million environmental refugees. 300 million people on the move because areas have either been flooded, there's been desertification, regions are too hot. The disruptions that will mean for our planet and our society are overwhelming. We can't even deal with the issue in San Diego of the, quote, illegal aliens, whatever that means, people crossing the border looking for work. Imagine 300 million people on the move because of disruptions. And this is a possible scenario that we really have to face. So how we deal with that, how we deal with water, how you go into an area, a place that you're living or visiting. What's, you know, do any of you think about what is the real system here in Monterey? Do they have water shortages? I mean, what's going on? We have to be conscious of those things on a very simple micro level so that these changes that are going to, we're going to have to be faced with really living in a very different kind of world with very different kinds of limits. I don't think things are unlimitable in terms of energy or anything else. I think we need to live within what is now being termed a sustainable, you know, planetary base. And how we do that is the biggest challenge that we really face. It's going to be enormous, politically, socially, personally, economically. This is the challenge of the 21st century, how to really bring this, our lives as a species back into balance with this planet. Otherwise, we're not going to have a really nice place to live, this blue marble. Thank you.